Welcome to the Faith Bible Church podcast. We hope the message you're about to hear is a blessing in your growth in Jesus Christ. We also pray that the message is not a substitute for your critical place in the local church and in community. Thanks again for joining us.
Hey, I want to start off by asking you guys a question. Who's your favorite teacher? Who is your favorite teacher? Who was the most influential teacher that you loved so much, that took you from kind of one place and then took you to another? Maybe you didn't have one of those. I'm not entirely sure, but I did. His name was Mr. Powell. Mr. Powell was awesome. Mr. Powell was the choir teacher. And yes, before you make fun of me for being in choir, it was a select choir, I'd have you know. Okay, so we were selected. We had to try out to join this choir. And Mr. Powell was an awesome teacher. He just loved music. He had a passion for it. And he brought together all manner of students in our high school. We had the artsy kids and the jocks, and all of them would come together because they loved the music that Mr. Powell would just give us a passion for and get excited. And as he was directing our choir, he would get like so fired up that he would get like these little drops of like white gunk at the corner of his mouth, you know, and then his armpits would get these giant rings of sweat because he'd be so into what we're doing. And it was kind of gross, but also inspiring because he had us singing in Latin. We were doing La Cremosa. We were doing Pie Jesu. We were singing selections from the Messiah. And he was always looking for that sound. Every year he was on a hunt for that sound. And man, when we found it, when it was all around us, beautiful. And Mr. Powell led us places we didn't think we were going to go. We were number one in a competition in Chicago. We were the top choir in the state of New York, and then eventually to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and competed with the best choirs in the nation and did pretty well. And so we loved the Vestal Voices. That was the name of the choir, the Vestal Voices. And we were excited about it, and Mr. Powell was beloved. We knew he loved us, and we also knew that he had a passion for the music. And so who your favorite teacher was, maybe you didn't have one. Maybe you have an example of all the teachers that you couldn't wait to get out of their class just one more day and you were hoping it was going to be done. But that's just the point I want you to think about today. Who are you, the leaders that you have loved? Who are the leaders that you would have followed? We would have followed Mr. Powell kind of anywhere, and we did. And he took us some amazing places. But we're going to be in the Gospel of John today. We're doing the life of Christ, and we're going to be in the Gospel of John, chapter 10. But what John has been doing in the Gospel, because we haven't been tracking that specific Gospel, what John has been doing is going through different Jewish festivals from chapter 5 through 10. And as he's been going through those Jewish festivals, Jesus has been capitalizing on the imagery of each of those festivals, saying things like, I'm the bread from heaven, I am the light of the world, each one tied to a different Jewish festival. When we get to John chapter 10, we're going to get to the festival that you guys know as Hanukkah, or the Feast of Dedication. So this is celebrating the idea of the Feast of Dedication in 165 BC, when the Jewish people were fighting against Greek influence. The Greeks had taken over Israel, and they were corrupting the Jerusalem temple and changing its worship. And there were some Jewish leaders that had been corrupted, and they were helping the process. And so they did a civil war. They fought against it. They rededicated the temple to the Jewish faith. The oil lasted for 8 days. It was a miracle, and thus Hanukkah. And they celebrate that even to this day, as you know. Well, around this discussion, you might imagine, is a discussion about how to tell the difference between a real shepherd and a false shepherd. And the background to that in the liturgy of this particular festival is a passage, Ezekiel chapter 34, where God says, I'm against you, shepherds of Israel, because you're hurting the sheep. You're not taking care of them. You're not doing the things that you should. And so I myself will shepherd my sheep. That's in Ezekiel chapter 34. You can look it up. It's amazing and fabulous. And it makes complete sense of why Jesus is going to say the things that he's about to say to us today. But not only is that happening with the festival that's listed later in chapter 10 that we won't actually read, But in chapter 9 in John's gospel, there's a miracle that Jesus did. He healed a man born blind, and all of John chapter 9 is about the man that's healed born blind arguing with the Pharisees. They want to interrogate him and find out about this miracle. How did this happen? Who did this to you? And is this a good thing? This man was born a sinner. How does he now see? And so they get in a big fight, and the man's like, hey, look, I'm for Jesus. I have my eyesight, okay? And they're like, oh, you're one of his followers, and they throw them out of the synagogue. And Jesus says, in earshot of the Pharisees, well, it's not you who have the blindness problem. You're healed, but these leaders. And that's the entire background and context as we roll into John chapter 10. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work our way through the passage bit by bit. What's exciting is that this is Jesus teaching. This is all his words to you and I. And so we're going to hear about one of his teachings to us, and we'll kind of walk our way through it, and then I'll just make some kind of comments at the end that kind of wrap it all up. So let's go to John chapter 10. If you have a Bible, follow along with us. Verses will be on your screen. Jesus starts off saying this, truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he's a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. Now, a stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Okay, and we'll just take this bit by bit. So Jesus, for the 15th or 6th and the 16th time in the Gospel of John, starts off his message by saying, truly, truly, I say to you. Or in Greek, amen, amen, I say to you. And he's going to say that 9 other times in the Gospel of John. And when Jesus says truly, truly, and he repeats that twice, I'm trying to tell you the truth. He's got to say it twice. This is a solemn moment. This is a big deal. He's trying to communicate something. So we want to kind of lean in on our chairs. And then Jesus paints an image of a sheepfold, a very common image that the people would have understood. They would have understood what this sheepfold was, the sheep pen. And I got a picture that generally kind of looks like it, and I'll put it up on the screen here of what this looks like. And so you would have like an open field, and there might be a rock wall up about maybe waist high. And it went all the way around, and there was usually only one entrance in and out. And the sheep would go in there at the nighttime to protect them from predators. And there might be a gate on that opening, or the shepherd may sit actually in the door or put thorn bushes in that doorway to keep predators out, and probably some thorn bushes along the top of that rock wall as well. And so Jesus is playing off of this imagery, and he says, listen, how can you tell the difference between the shepherd and a thief and a robber? He says, well, if you're looking at something like this, who enters? The shepherd is always going to enter in to the front door. So that's how you're going to know. They're never going to climb up over the wall and sneak in and come over the wall. That's the way the robbers and the thieves come in. So the shepherd's always going to come straight ahead. He's got no tricks. He's going to talk to you directly. Right? But the robbers are going to come in a different way. How else are you going to know the fake shepherds from the real shepherds? He says, well, you're going to know by their voice. You know by their voice. The sheep will always recognize, Jesus says, the voice. He calls out to his sheep, leads them by name, and then leads them out, and they recognize his voice. But when they hear a stranger's voice, they won't recognize it. They'll get that sort of stranger danger feeling, the sheep will. And honestly, this is true. You can watch really cute YouTube videos on this. The shepherds, even today in modern Israel, in other places as well, oftentimes shepherds have a unique call for their sheep. And I was watching this cute YouTube video yesterday, and they had all these high school kids trying to call this group of sheep, right? And they were using the same call that the shepherd did, and they were like going, "Taka, taka, 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 taka." Sheep are doing nothing. And then the next kid tried it, and the next student tried it, and after that, none of them got any response. And then the shepherd, the farmer, gets up, and he makes the same noise. Taka, 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 taka. You see all their heads start popping up. And then eventually they all just come running down the hill. Because they actually recognize his voice. Because there's a relationship there. Because there's connection there. There's history there. And for Jesus, he's saying, you'll know me because I'm going to come in the door. I'm not trying to sneak around. And you'll know me by recognizing my voice. And the theme around all of this is leadership. Shepherds are about leadership. That is the background to this image in the Jewish idea. The theme is leadership and who should the sheep follow. And it's also about style of leadership because it says, as Jesus notes, that the shepherd will lead them out. He leads from the front. He's not trying to drive the sheep. The sheep are coming willingly. All they have to do is hear his voice, and they want to follow where he's going because they know it's going to lead to good things. Okay? So let's move on. The next part of Jesus' teaching, verse 6, says that this figure of speech, Jesus spoke to them, but they didn't understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to him again, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This is a very famous passage. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus says, I have come, or the shepherd has come to give life and life abundantly. Here, the image changes. No longer is Jesus necessarily the shepherd. He starts to say, I'm the doorway. I'm the doorway. And the only way in and out of this sheepfold, this pen, is through me. So if you want safety at night, and you want pasture during the day, if you want to live a thriving life of what a sheep should have, you've got to go through the door. You've got to understand the need and where the door is. There's an exclusivity to this idea. You have to know the way. Each sheep to follow this leadership needs to know where the door is to go in and out. But he continues the contrast in saying that the thieves and robbers, though, they're not going to lead you to the door. They're not going to lead you to the way. They're going to lead you to other places where they want you to go for their purposes. Because thieves and robbers, by definition, are there only to use the sheep for their ends. A shepherd has more investment. A shepherd is interested in guiding and nurturing and guarding. And so the gate is important to go in and out, and the shepherd uses the gate. And Jesus is the gate, and he's the shepherd. He's saying, you have to come by me. It's akin to Jesus saying, I'm the way, the truth, the life. This is the leadership you need to follow. This is the voice you need to follow. There really isn't any other. There's only one door to the sheep pen, and anybody else is going to be a robber or a thief. Watch out. Watch out who you're following. And the imagery changes. I gave you a nice lush green field with that sheep pen, but really the shepherd picture for Israel looks a little bit more like this image. We can put that up on the screen. It's a desert climate, realize, in Israel. It's steep hills, it's rocks, it's hot. It's a dangerous place. It's a dangerous world out there, for sheep in particular. There are animals. We'll get to wolves in a second, as he's going to mention. There's thieves, there's robbers, and they're here to kill, steal, and destroy. They're here to take from you for their ends. They're here to get you to follow them, to groom you so they can abuse you. And thieves and robbers, they usually come a little bit with trickiness, right? If it was so easy to spot, you would spot it immediately. But they try to have a soothing voice. They try to lead you on, but realize that they're there to kill, steal, and destroy. But the shepherd realized it's not this cuddly, cute little stuffed animal kind of moment. Shepherds are tough. It's a rugged environment. It's hot. And they got to protect the sheep from some serious predators because the livelihood is at stake. The sheep are their livelihood, and their sheep are vulnerable. And literally, as a sheep, you're entrusting your life to the care of someone else. And so coming in and out of that gate is vital. That is your protection. That is your place to have life, because this is a dangerous world. Jesus' teaching goes on, verses 11 through 15. Jesus switches the image yet again. In verse 11, he says, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand, is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. So not only is Jesus the gate, but he's also the shepherd, and he comes back to that. He says twice, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. He said twice, I'm the door. I'm the door. And he says, look, I have intimate knowledge of you sheep. Intimate knowledge. I'm a good shepherd, and I will lay down my life because he's the owner of the sheep. In the East, the shepherds literally owned the sheep. The sheep were their livelihood. And so they were fully invested in the lives of their sheep because the sheep had to live for them to live. There was a vital connection there. And so the shepherd is all the way in to protect them. That's his investment. That's his livelihood. He is the owner. And Jesus contrasts that with the hireling, the person who's hired. And so when a wolf comes, their commitment is to the money, not to the sheep. And so as soon as a wolf comes, they're out of there. The shepherd has a higher commitment, a higher investment, not just committed to surviving, but committed to the sheep for thriving. Because the more the sheep thrive, the better it is for the shepherd. And that's what his commitment is. He owns the sheep. He is not going to run away. He has a relational connection. And Jesus points to the relationship between the Son and the Father to even say that. He says, I'm the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. This is a relational leadership. This isn't obligation or force or push or drive. Jesus is saying, you know me, right? Don't you know me? I'm the good shepherd. I know you. You know me. And it's just like how I know the Father, and the Father knows me. I know the Father, I know me, and I will lay down my life for the sheep. I'm willing to sacrifice everything I have. I'm willing to give my life. So when the wolf comes, I'll let him kill me so you can live. And that's exactly what Jesus is going to do epically and finally when he goes to the cross, to literally lay down his life for you. For a purpose, which we'll get to. But he is willing. It is a sacrificial leadership that's very different than someone who's a hired hand who's doing it just for the money. Jesus completes his teaching, verses 16 to 18. He says, look, I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice. Again, that voice. And they will become one flock with one shepherd. And for this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it again. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down, Jesus says, and I have authority to take it up again. This is the commandment I received from my Father. Jesus is saying now here at the end, he says, look, I have other sheep. I'm an owner of sheep. It's not just these sheep. I have sheep from another pen, somewhere else. What he's referring to that we think are the Gentiles. This is not just a Jewish game. It's to the Gentiles. There's other sheep. But here's the thing. Both those sheep and the Jewish sheep all respond to one voice because they're actually one flock. And he's going to bring them together as they all follow his leadership, his voice. And he's going to bring them together with that same peculiar call, that ta-ta-ka-ta-ka-ta-ka-ta. And they'll come. And in the end, Jesus says, look, This is why God, the Father, loves me so much. God, the Father, loves me so much because I reflect his heart. He asked me to go for these sheep, and I didn't do it not willingly. I didn't do it out of obligation. I didn't do it because my Father told me. I did it because of my own initiative. And I'm willing to lay down my own life for them of my own initiative because those sheep are precious to me. And that's why Jesus says, the Father loves me because he gives me this commandment and I do it willingly. And that's how it should be. The Father asks the Son goes willingly, and the shepherd asks the sheep to follow him, and the sheep do it willingly, and it works, and it's a nice system. And then the shepherd gives his life, very important Greek word in this section, on behalf of the sheep. On behalf of, might as well be in place of. Just a small Greek word, but every time it's used, it's in a sacrificial context. Jesus willing to give his life so that we can live. Is he a good shepherd? How can you tell? How do you know? This is the point of Jesus' story. So let's take it apart a little bit, shall we? And just talk for a minute. Jesus says he's a good shepherd, and his invitation is for you to follow. Do you hear the invitation when he comes? It's kind of a weird thing, right? Somebody vouching for themselves, showing up saying, I'm the good shepherd, you should follow me. There is an invitation in him telling you that he's the good shepherd. But it's kind of a strange thing. But think about it. Who can Jesus go to for credentials? What references can he put down for you? Is there somebody who can testify for the Son of God that he's the right person to follow? There isn't anybody. And so he just has to give you his self-revelation of who he is. Because there's nobody to vouch for him. There's nobody higher than him. And so he says, listen, I'm just trying to talk to you. Truly, truly, let me talk to you. I'm a good shepherd. I'm a good shepherd. How do you know? How do you know I'm a good shepherd? Listen, he says, I'm going to come through the gate. I'm not going to try to trick you. I'm not trying to sneak up on you. I'm not trying to do a sleight of hand or misinformation. I'm not a cult. I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm not antiquated. I'm just honest. I come through the gate that I'm supposed to come. I come straight at you. And I'm going to tell you the truth. And so he's asking for our trust. He's saying, am I doing things that are trustworthy? Am I being honest with you? Because I'm a good shepherd. Do you see that? He says that he knows us. The truth of it is, as Jesus is, he's already read your biography. Did you know you had one? He already read it. Cover to cover, beginning to end. The shepherds in the East knew their sheep. They selected them. They oftentimes birthed them. They picked bugs off of them every day. They cleaned them. They took care of them. They knew their tendencies. They had journeyed with them. They watched them struggle. They watched them thrive. They knew them inside and out. And they knew them so well they could call them and they would come. Jesus knows you like that. So you can't sing the song from the 80s, Parents Just Don't Understand. You can't say, my boss just doesn't understand, not with Jesus. This shepherd knows his sheep. He knows his people. He knows you inside and out. He knows your entire story. It is an intimate relational knowledge, and it comes with tons of affection, even despite your mistakes. The irony that Jesus says throughout this section, he says, not only do my sheep know me, but we know him. I find that a little bit strange that it says that we know him, because so many people seem to not know who Jesus is or really understand or struggle. But I think the idea is almost like the two guys that were walking to Emmaus in Luke chapter 24, and Jesus was walking with them and teaching them, and they said, didn't our hearts burn when he was talking to us? And I don't know about you, but there was a point in my life when my parents were going through a divorce and there was chaos all around, that Jesus' voice cut through that chaos. So I was reading my Good News Bible with my little stick figure drawings in there. And Jesus' words were guiding me through. They felt true. They felt real. It touched a place inside where maybe eternity was set in my heart. Maybe that's happened for you. Maybe that still needs to happen for you. Find what St. Augustine found, that our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. Do we know him? Do we feel that pull toward him? So many speak that they do. And he's a good shepherd. He's not self-interested. He was there to benefit you. His leadership to benefit you. He protects you. He guides you in and he leads you out. Do you hear when Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd? I want you to hear an invitation today. Trust me. Won't you trust me? And I have a big question for you. The question I have for you that I want to resonate with you is what voice, you can put that question up, what voice or voices are you listening to the most right now? Jesus was talking about part of that trust as listening to the voice, listening to the voice. There are so many voices right now. Aren't there a lot of really loud voices? Which one are you listening to? What type of influence on, what kind of profs or politicians or podcasts do you listen to? And where are they leading you? And are they exercising directional control over your life? Are the thoughts that come out of your mouth more from your news outlet than from the shepherd? There's so many voices right now, so many stances, so many causes, so many posts, so many arguments. Are you able to hear the distinct call of the shepherd through all of that? You need to. It's important to discern that so that you don't let the thieves and the robbers into the pen to steal you away. Do you have a guru? Do you have decisions you need to make? Can you hear his voice? Are you down on your knees and are you even trying to listen? Because he's calling. His word is available. It is there for you. And Jesus asks us to be discerning sheep, not to be scrutinizing sheep. This isn't the job of the sheep to scrutinize any shepherd. You don't see the sheep in this passage picking on the shepherd. You see him having to identify between the right shepherd and the wrong thief and robber. And it's important if we can call it a fake. And the truth of it is, I think a lot of us have caught the fakes. In fact, we're kind of jaded. One thing we don't want to be, though, and what we don't like about this kind of teaching is, I don't want to be a sheep. That's what I don't like. In fact, right now, being a sheep is an insult. Hear people wearing a mask, somebody goes, sheep. Not wearing a mask, sheep. It's an honor to be a sheep. To know that you need some help from the outside to lead you. You cannot be a sheep, but where will you go? Who will lead you? And where will you end up? And will you be safe? We've got trust issues, let's be honest. There's been a lot of thieves and robbers in the past, haven't there? Churches that maybe hurt you, political leaders you don't trust anymore, misguided, abusive parents, different people that have burned you and led you, and now you're a bit jaded, a little crusty, and you don't really trust. You're kind of trust averse right now. You're not exactly a very good sheep, neither am I. I got all that baggage too. And that makes it really hard to listen to really any voice. And I don't know about you, but where I go to is the voice that I only trust as my own. I'm not even sure I'm ready to be a sheep. But here's a big point I want you to know. A big point I have for you today. You can put that up there, that knowing the goodness of Jesus' leadership is directly proportional to our willingness to be led. Let me say that again. Knowing the goodness of Jesus' leadership is directly proportional to our willingness to be led. Are we willing to be led? Can you even trust anymore? Do you have that capacity, or has it been broken in you? It is hard for Jesus to lead us if we're committed to our own strategies. If our entire approach to Jesus' shepherding of us is this. Do you know this motion right now? This is a trust-averse motion. Jesus, I love that you died for me. Yes, lay down your life. I love that. I love that. Please don't challenge me. Jesus, I love that encouragement. Oh gosh, encouragement, comfort, accountability. No, thank you. Oh, Jesus, yes, lead me where I want to go when it's comfortable and it's nice, it's going to be good, there'll be success, plenty of money and everything like that. Don't ask me to sacrifice. That's a hard deal for a sheep to say that to a shepherd. It's not exactly leadership, is it? And to benefit from God's plan, I think we have to let go of our own and our own strategies. You cannot have a God plus mindset when you're a sheep. God, I want to follow your leadership if it leads where I want to go. And inside, that voice inside sounds a lot like pride sometimes. Because see, in our pride demands that Jesus' leadership lead us where we want to go, to certain outcomes, to certain expectations. And if it's not pride, it's our fears. Our fears are screaming out and they are determining, you know what, Jesus, I'll follow your leadership, but only if it has only a certain amount of risk and that there's certain guaranteed safeties for me and my children. You know what, Jesus, I'll follow your leadership, but my pain declares that certain things that you might ask me is inappropriate and is not right, and I just won't do it again. It's not worth the price or the effort or the hurt again. I won't do it. And if it's not our pain, it's our relief. Our relief requires certain indulgences along the way to make us feel like we're going fine. The AC's got to be going. The food's got to be good. The other addictions I can't let go of. And so whatever it is, we're saying, Jesus, yes, I love that leadership. Well, wait, but when it comes to my pain, when it comes to my pride, when it comes to my fear, when it comes to my relief, back off. I don't know if you've seen a film. It's called Free Burma Rangers, but it's an important film I think you should see. It's about an Aggie, Texas Aggie. That's irrelevant to the story, but I thought I might mention it. But it's a guy named David Eubanks who was an Aggie, former Aggie, but now he tried to radically listen to God's leadership in his life. And where that led him was Burma, the longest running civil war going on for 50 years in the world. Did you even know that was happening? And he went there and he took his wife and his children into a civil war. And in that place, in that dark place, they have found life. And they have rescued people from war-torn areas and started a movement called the Free Burma Rangers. And there's been so many pods of them, they now surround where all the fighting is happening. And they've trained the Burmese people to help each other and to pull them out of war zones. And he goes, look, on the one side, when I'm trying to follow God, on the one side I find that sin will bog me down and take me away from all the good things I might do. He goes, but on the other side, there's a lot of good things. They're really good things. They're absolutely good things. And they're good things to be a part of, but they distract me from obeying God. He goes, but right in the middle, when I actually obey God and I'm willing to go where he wants me to go, he goes, every time I've gone down that path, I find more. I just keep finding more. Every time I just listen to him, it leads me to even more than I thought was possible. And that might be what that abundant life that Jesus is talking about is. When I was a kid in Young Life, they defined the abundant life. They said, Jesus wants to give you life and life abundantly. And then they had a whole camp that week. And I thought abundant life meant parasailing and hanging out on the beach and being around cute girls. That's what I thought it was. That's not it. And maybe you define it differently. Maybe for you, abundant life is a certain spouse, a certain job, a certain level of success, some strategy that you're after. That's not it. There's something in the middle. when we just obey willingly God's direction, His leadership in our lives. There's something in the middle. And it leads to places that you cannot buy and don't come from circumstances, those invisible spiritual qualities of love and deep friendships and purpose and goodness and rest and gentleness and strength. Those only come from following God's leadership. It's not a destination, it's who you're following. And here's the deal. This is the beautiful formula I want to give you here at the end, is that Jesus' good leadership plus, very important, plus our willingness to follow. That will lead you where you want to go. The abundant life. And do you know that Faith Bible Church, our mission is to build generations of what? Jesus followers. Jesus followers. For these trust-averse sheep. Are we willing to follow this shepherd who has laid out a great case of why he's so good? Willing to lay down his life? Will we regularly learn to hear his voice, hear his word, adopt his heart, and take grace to wherever he leads? The last verses of the passage, and then we'll be done. John chapter 10, verses 19 to 21. After Jesus' teaching, a division occurred among the Jews because of these words. Many of them were saying he has a demon and is insane. Why do you listen to him? Others were saying, these are not the sayings of one demon-possessed. A demon cannot open the eyes of the blind, can he? An open debate. Can we trust this guy? How did he heal people? How did he do the things he did? Can I put my life in the hands of someone who will give their life for me? I want you to hear Jesus' words. I'm a good shepherd. And I want you to think about how willingly you follow him. And whether today, if he asked you to do something, would you do it? Because he probably already has asked you. And we're just dealing with trust issues, aren't we? But here, breaking through those trust issues, the line, I'm a good shepherd. You can trust me. Hear my voice. Take me at my word.